Hi, today we're on a quest for crispy pork belly, and what I have here is two 4x4, 4.5 by 4 inch hunks of pork belly. So here's the pork belly. This one's thicker than this one, so there's two methods I'm going to try. I'm going to take the thinner one and just do a basic oven bake, and the thicker one, since it's thicker, I'm going to try parboiling it and then poking holes into the skin and seeing if that turns out good crispy pork belly. One thing I'm trying to avoid is make it overly complicated. I think in the Asian markets, when they sell crispy roasted pork, they don't do a lot of uh, salt covering and poking holes. They just pretty much slash the meat, add seasoned salt, and then roast in a hot burner oven. So I'll try to keep it simple and see what the results are. And if the results are mediocre, then I'll do more complicated things. But right now, idea is to keep it simple. All right, for the larger pork belly, the thicker piece, I have 4 cups of water, 2 teaspoons of salt, 2 green onions, and some ginger, about 3 slices of ginger about the size of a quarter. And basically I'm going to poach this for about 5 minutes, and hopefully this is a flavorful broth that will infuse into the pork, or at least provide some flavor. And later on I'll add some more seasonings on the back. The idea of par cooking is I'll get the skin soft and I'll poke it with holes on the skin side. All right, the pork's been simmering for about 5 minutes. I'm gonna fish it out and dry it and prep it for the rest of the dish or the cooking. So here's the skin. Feels like it's a little more pliable. It's shrunk a little, but I'll dry this out and continue on with the recipe. All right, here's the par cooked pork belly right here. I've allowed it to dry, and here's just the regular pork belly. As you can tell, this one's thicker than this one, but this one I don't think I'll just cook normally in the oven. This one, since it was thicker, I think it would take the boiling a little better. Also, the theory with parboiling is that the skin will soften and I could poke holes in it. I don't have the nail thingy, but I have this meat tenderizer with sharp edges. I'll see if it's able to do anything there. And the idea is just to poke holes in the skin and not go too far. And the idea is that these holes will help puff up the skin when it gets crispy. I can't tell if it's actually going through or not, but give it a try. I just rotate it and keep pressing through. Feels like I'm penetrating it. It's hard to tell. I might as well give this a try. Since I have it out. Now that the top is prepared, what I'll do is season the meat on the bottom. And the idea is just to cut through the meat, not all the way down to the skin, so roughly a third of the way through. I'll just take a knife and score the top, roughly a ½ inch apart, and I'll do little squares. And in theory, this will help the seasoning penetrate the meat. So even though I boiled this for 5 minutes, you could tell the center is still raw and can do with some more cooking. And I'll do the same with this slice. It's estimating about ½ inch, and slicing about 1/3 way through. You don't have to press hard. If you have a sharp knife, just let the weight of the knife drag through the meat. I could probably go deeper here. And for my seasoning mixture, I have 5 spice powder, salt, so about 1.5 teaspoons of salt, 1 teaspoon of 5 spice powder, 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, and 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder. And the idea is just to sprinkle it over the meat and just work it into the cracks and crevices. Most recipes call for marinading and drying in the refrigerator overnight. I don't know, I just want to try to simplify it as much as possible and see if it works without going through all that hassle. So the idea is to use a highly seasoned mixture on the back side, then go to the oven the same day. So it looks like I got everything seasoned thoroughly. Might as well add some to the side. And if you get some on the skin, you could wipe it off. But the idea is to leave the skin alone so it could crisp out without the season burning into the meat or on the skin side. So season the sides also. One thing I did do is I tasted this mix before to make sure it was salty enough. I kept adding salt until I felt it was good enough. So that's how I came up with 1.5 teaspoons of salt. And 5 spice powder, usually a little goes a long way. So I'll wipe this clean, but the sides are seasoned. And next step is I'll put this in a aluminum foil boat for roasting or cooking in the oven. Again, I'll clean this off before I put it in the oven. Okay, I'm gonna make a sort of wrap for the pork. I'm just kind of sizing it. You want the skin exposed. So I'm just kind of pre-size the foil. Give me an idea how high it should go. Okay, now the idea is the skin will be exposed to the heat and everything under the foil will braise and cook slowly. So I'll do that to the other piece of pork also. Alright, here's the thinner no boil piece of pork. There's a little stuff on top. I'm just gonna wipe it off. Clean the skin. And I'll also here create a little foil pouch. Okay, I'll continue on. Alright, when I did my porchetta recipe, I had let the pork roast dry in the refrigerator and rub lemon juice over it throughout the night. So this is the same idea. Supposedly vinegar, this is white vinegar, helps denature the skin a little and dries out the pork. So I'll give it a shot. Just a light brushing of vinegar on both, and then I'm going to use a little salt. I've seen some recipes call for salt crust, and to me that just seems like a lot of salt. And I'll just as if you're eating this, just sprinkle a little salt on top and just make sure it just gets in there. So that was just a sprinkle of salt, as if you're salting your own food. And it's going into a 240 degree oven, so pork belly likes to be cooked low and slow. So 240 for an hour, and hopefully that helps dry out the skin. And after an hour, the skin should be dry. Then I'll hit it up with some high heat to crisp up the skin. So that's the theory. Let's see if it actually pans out into a 240 degree oven. Alright, here's the pork after an hour at 240. The skin is definitely dry. I was hoping it'd be a little more drier, so I think I'll put it in the oven for another half hour, see how that cooks. You could smell the 5-spice powder cooking. There's that aroma. The foil's come loose a little, so let me try to tighten that up. Make sure it still cooks in the center. It's definitely dry, but I'm going to try to make it a little more drier. So back in the oven, another half hour, 240. Alright, here's the pork that's been cooking at 240 for 90 minutes. The skin is definitely dry, but it's still a little soft, but I think it's dry enough. So the next step, I'm jacking up the oven to 450. And usually when you roast a pork, there's a lot of fat coming off of the pork. But since this is a little slab that I've cut into chunks, I'm going to brush it with oil to, hopefully this will help promote browning and crisping of the skin. This is avocado oil, has a high smoke point of 450 degrees. So I'll just generously slather on the oil. And when the oven comes to temperature, 450 degrees, and I'll shoot for 15 minutes and take a look at it, see how the skin's behaving, and keep going, keep an eye on it, and check every probably 5-10 minutes afterwards. I want a nice crispy skin. Hopefully it's nice and puffy, but I'll kind of expose the skin a little more so that it gets better heat. So 450, 15 minutes, and keep an eye on it to make sure it puffs up. Alright, the oven's come up to temperature 450. I've also added another sheet of foil to catch any drippings off of the pork roast or the pork belly. That way it makes for cleanup a little easier if it overflows the aluminum foil pouches. Also, I push the foil down a little so the skin is first quarter inch of the skin is exposed, maybe even a little more, so hopefully that crisps up the top and the surrounding area. So 450 for 15 minutes, and I'll keep an eye until it puffs up nicely. Alright, this is 450 for 15 minutes. It's starting to crisp up, so I'm going to put it back in the oven and let it keep going. Alright, here's the pork after a half hour at 450. This is the pre-cooked one, or the parboiled one. It's definitely crisped up. This one's starting to crisp up along the edges. This one is just went in kind of unboiled. It was in its natural state. So I'm going to take this one off and bake this one off a little more just to puff up the skin some more. So this one I'll take out. It's stuck to the foil. So it's definitely crispy. I don't know if you could hear that. So this one is getting there. It's not quite crispy yet. So flip this around. Continue baking. Okay, this is another 5 minutes at 450. I don't know if it's changed much, so what I'm going to do is, since I'm getting impatient, I'm going to hit broil on high and start that. Put this under the broiler for a couple minutes, and one thing about using the broiler, I have to keep an eye on it, just make sure it doesn't burn. Alright, this is less than a minute under broil, and it browned a little too much. That's why I don't like using the broiler. I should have been patient and stuck with 450, or maybe increased it to 500 and kept an eye on it. Alright, here's the final results. This is the one that was parboiled. Here's the one that was not parboiled. They originally were about 4 by 4 inches, and they look like they've shrunk about an inch around each side, so they're probably 3 by 3 or 3.5 by 3. And 3.5. This one shrunk less since it wasn't boiled, but still it shrunk. And using the broiler, I kind of burned the edges. That's still not puffy. So right now it looks like parboiling, you get the skin to puff up better. And if I were patient, I probably would have got pretty good results here on the skin. This looks good. So I'm going to let it cool off, and then I'll cut it up and give it a taste. Alright, here's the finished pork. It's been allowed to cool. So this is the one that was parboiled. This is the one that was not. So it looks good. Let me try to cut it into strips. So it's definitely crispy. I'll flip it over. I don't know if that's going to help or hinder. Nope, it's cutting. Here it is. It's definitely crispy. And it's very juicy. I don't know if you can see the juices. I'll cut it into strips. These are the samples. And now for this one, it's definitely seems like it lost a lot of moisture. It might be easier to cut it through the bottom. See that, or I need a sharper knife. So you have to give it a whack to break through the skin. Again, this one is also pretty juicy. Skin is definitely crispy. Not pieces aren't as uniform. Okay, let me plate these up and I'll give it a try. Alright, here are the finished results. This is the parboiled roasted pork. This is the pork that was not. And usually what I like to eat the pork with is with spicy hot mustard. But I have this stone ground Dijon. Also with pork, especially when it's fatty, I like sort of a soy vinegar dressing. This is essentially a pot sticker sauce. 1 part soy sauce, 1 part vinegar, some ginger, garlic, green onions, a little sugar. I use artificial sugar to take the bite off of the soy sauce and the vinegar, and just a little water to mellow it out a little. And this is sriracha sauce for a little spice. You could use chili oil or any other spicy sauces. So I'll give this a try and see how it turns out. I'll try the parboiled one first. I'll use my finger. So there's the meat. This is the end piece. So I'll give it a try. You can taste the 5-spice powder. Meat is very flavorful for not marinating overnight. Let's try the skin. I don't know if you could hear that. Nice, fluffy pork rinds, very good. I'll try the one that was not parboiled. Well, this turns out to be a smaller piece, but I'll give it a shot. It's the same dry mix I used on both, so it has a good flavor. 5-spice and salt. Let's try the skin. Not bad. Has a good crunch. Since the skin didn't puff up uniformly, some of it seems a little tougher than others, while the parboiled one puffed up nicely, and it has a nice crispy crunch without a lot of resistance. So I think parboiled might be the way to go. Also, it could be just because this was the end piece that had a thicker cut, so maybe it held up better than this thinner piece. But I'll give it another shot. Definitely crunchy, a little more brittle, harder. Oh, this is definitely crunchy but soft or fluffy. So right now I'd say in the future I'd probably parboil it and then season with the same type of dry rub and bake and poke. So it's good. Good results.